Good afternoon, folks. Hope you're all well. Um, just going to continue our Spanish Succession mini campaign that we're doing, and thought it might be an idea to just show the map that we're working off. The previous battle report that we did was for the Siege of Lille, or the British Allied forces attempting to lift the Siege of Lille, which ended up in failure for the British Allied forces, and they were forced to retreat. Today we're kind of doing a reverse. So at the moment, the town or city of Tunai is currently under siege from the British at the moment, uh, with their Army C that you can see there in the red square, and the French are going to try and lift the siege. Well, not lift the siege, well, kind of lift the siege. They're going for a slightly different strategy. What they've done with their Army Force A is they've split the force. One force has gone on a right flank feint, just through Af and to the east of Tunai, which has managed to pull some of the British Allied forces away from the siege. Meanwhile, their attacking force has swung left and is going to attempt to either hamper the siege artillery by spiking the guns, or hopefully, if they can, drag the siege artillery away, which will render the siege useless for the British Allied forces as well, and should lift the siege for Tunai. So that's the battle report we'll be doing today. We will be doing it slightly different. We won't be using black powder this time because of the small forces involved. We're going to go back to the Charles Grant wargame rules, but obviously any effects still get carried over into the actual campaign. So that's about it for the map. So we'll move on to the actual battle report.
Good day, folks. So this is going to be a battle report continuing the mini campaign that we're doing for the Spanish Succession. So this is, as mentioned on the map, this is the French Allied force attempting to capture the siege guns. So they've got two options. They can try and drag the siege guns away, or they could spike them. Obviously if they spike them, then they're only going to be temporarily out of action, whereas if they can manage to drag them away, then obviously they'll be out of action for the siege, which will impact the siege. Because it's a smaller battle, we're not going with black powder for this one. We're going to use the Charles Grant wargame rules, which is those, because we're looking at 2 battalions for the British. The field guns cannot be used, the siege guns cannot be used. We can imagine kind of that they're in place, and behind them possibly, there's a further ditch or a further barrier that would stop them from just turning around and firing on the French forces, because they'd be put in place for the siege. So the only option the British player has, which will be me, is the 2 battalions. We have dice for reinforcements. So because it's a siege, obviously it's not just one side of the one part that's being besieged. There are going to be other units around the siege that can come to help me out. But unfortunately, my first dice roll for reinforcements was a 5 over there, which means turn 5, which is quite a while for me to hold on. So I've got my 2 battalions. The gunners can fight, but obviously the artillery I can't use the artillery, so I don't know how much use the gunners will actually be, but they might pitch in a little bit. So against me is the French Allied force. Bear with me, I'm using a little stand this time. I don't know, I normally use it freehand, but just to make it a bit steadier, I've got a little tripod. You may hear some background noise because I'm in the conservatory, and it is typical Lancashire weather outside. It's pouring down. I suppose we could imagine that it's pouring down on the battlefield. So for the French Allied, they've got a full brigade of 4 battalions, and a cavalry attachment of cavalry over there. That's all they have. They don't get any reinforcements. So their strategy will be basically to try and overwhelm the small British forces and take those guns away, or spike those guns, whichever option you pick, as quickly as possible. The rules, like I said, the rules we're using are are kind of, well, they are old school rules for war games, but I think they are enjoyable. We've used them many times, and for a smallish action like this, I think they're quite well suited. So we'll see how it plays, and hopefully I can hold on to my my artillery. So let's see. Okay, so here we are on turn one. As you can imagine, turn one, not a great deal of action, just the French Allied force, well, brigade moving forward and the cavalry moving forward. The line infantry have a movement of 6, and the heavy cavalry, which that cavalry over there is, they have a movement of 9, but they also have what's called a battle move. Just get in the book. It's basically for every turn they rest, they can move a battle move of 12 inches. Obviously, because they've just come in off a column, then they haven't had any turns of rest, so they just move 9 inches. No movement yet on the British side by myself. We've already decided to change it slightly. What we're going to do is we're going to give the option of the artillery coming into play. So what we're going to do is dice for each artillery piece each turn. On a turn of 6, they've managed to manhandle it. Sorry, on a roll of 6, they've managed to manhandle it, the artillery piece, so it can be used just to make it a little bit more interesting. So what I'll do, we shall roll for this one here first. That is a war 3, so that's no good. Next one. It's 2. No, I'm not doing well so far. Then we've got this one here. 3. Come on, gunners, don't let me down. Next one. 1. And the very last one here. A 1. So despite that new rule that we just added, it didn't do me any good on this turn. So we'll see if we can get them moving on, or at least one artillery piece moving on the next turn. Okay, turn 2, and further movement forward from the French Allied Brigade. So they're slightly out of musket range at the moment, but on the next turn they will be in musket range. I've decided not to move mine forward. I did consider moving my 2 battalions forward to get into that musket range, but I think I will just wait for the French Allied to move towards me. The first volley is always a better volley in these rules, and obviously with the period. Because they took more care to load the first shot, which always means a better first volley. So I'm kind of saving that maybe until they get a bit closer. We haven't done the artillery rolls yet, so we'll see if my gunners are awake and I can get some of these. So from left to right, do the first one. 5. Next one. 6. That's 1. So we'll just turn that around for now. There we go. Turn around. Okay, next one. 3. Next one. 2. And the very last one. 2. So at least one of my artillery pieces can come into action. So I will obviously have to make a gap for that artillery piece as well, which maybe I should have thought of that before. As I've already stated that my battalions aren't moving, I can't move them now, and we will go straight onto the firing phase. So, but that artillery piece will not be able to fire because it's being blocked at the moment. So it's not going to come into play until turn 3. So I should have thought about that, shouldn't I? But we'll see what happens on turn 3. Okay, so we're on turn 3 of shooting. We've done a movement. Within the rules, if you're in line, you have the option of, rather than moving the full 6, you can move 4 and do a volley fire, which is what the French Bavarians decided to do. I also decided to fire on this turn. Was considering reserving my first volley for them to get a bit closer, but seeing what he was doing, I decided to fire as well. So all units are fired, well, all the front units. So we got the Bavarian unit on the left here, and the French unit on the right here. This particular unit is a guards unit, which means every 4 figures get a dice instead of the normal line, which is every 6 figures get a dice. And you can also see that we've left the artillery stick in place as well. It was a blue on this one, so the rain shot bounced over. So up. So you can see they had it been a red, then I would have caught some casualties. No luck. My artillery, unfortunately, didn't redeploy this turn, so still only the 1 artillery piece. Move that stick out of the way. Now we can see the results of the volley. The French Bavarians came off the better, so you can see that they've got a total of 6 hits against this battalion here. Although my firing was good as well, considering this is not a guards unit, and I got 6 hits as well. So we'll roll for those hits in a minute. The Bavarians got 5 hits. See there on those 2 dice, and the my other British battalion only got 3 hits. So we'll once the lad comes back in the room, he doesn't like to be on camera, so he always steps out when I do the videos. Once he comes back in the room, we shall roll and decide how many casualties that actually causes. So we'll see what happens now. Okay, so after the volley fire, this is the result. So the first British battalion lost 3. Although their colonel was was targeted as well, but didn't get hit, thankfully. So it was a near miss for him. Must have plucked his coattails. 3 against this unit, which isn't too bad considering it was the guards, French guards, that were firing at us. And again, we inflicted 3 on the French guards battalion, and 2 on that battalion. So pretty even, really. I think I did 1 better. Sorry, 1 worse. I got 3 on each, but no officers are hit. The guards battalion colonel also had a near miss, so the officers are leading a charmed life today, and it was just the unfortunate ORs, the infantry themselves, that are taking all the hits at the moment. So we'll clean up the table, take the casualties off, and then we shall move on to the next move. Okay, so we're just doing the shooting phase of turn 4 now. Of the movement phase, the French allied moved forward again 4 and did their option to fire. I moved my left-hand battalion 4 inches forward, obviously with the option to fire, but kept my other battalion in situ. You'll see there's no dice on there, I'll explain that in a minute. My artillery this turn, because the artillery fires first, did manage to cause some round shot casualties, so unfortunately my other guns, again, no 6s, so they are still in position, not helping out at all. So then we came on to the volley fires, and these 2 even again, so we got 3 hits for the French and 3 hits for the British. The Bavarians got 5 hits on the British battalion, which is very good for them, but unfortunately the British got no hits from this battalion. So we're going to have a few more casualties here. I can imagine there'll be a morale check after this, after we do the casualties. So we'll dice for casualties, see if the officer's still leading a charmed life. He hasn't moved his cavalry yet. He's keeping them just over there. They're not that great against infantry, unless the infantry are disordered or are suffering in some way, which I believe is much more to the period. We're not talking about Napoleonic cavalry charging here, hence the reason I believe they didn't even bother forming squares, the infantry, when they were charged by cavalry. So, but he's holding them back. On my next turn I will get my reinforcements, so I'm hoping for a battalion of infantry. I might get a cavalry regiment, but I'm hoping I'll get a British battalion. We'll dice for that. So we'll move on to the casualties and then see what that result is. Okay, so we've done the casualties that were inflicted. You see there my battalion came off the worst. Although, I mean, this battalion also lost 3 as well, so, but the difference is they lost an officer. So although we had to do a morale check for them, they only needed to get 2 or both, but unfortunately they rolled a 1. So on the next move they will be falling back 6 inches, and I'll have to attempt to rally them. So, but at least on this turn, this next turn I will get some reinforcements. So we'll see what happens from now on. Okay, so we've just done turn 5 movement. You can see I've moved my battalion forward, just trying to delay these French as much as possible. Again, I didn't get another artillery piece deployed. Just can't roll a 6 today for some reason. No surprise there. Not when it matters anyway. The battalion has retreated 6 inches, so they'll have to try and do a rally at the end of this move. My lad has moved his Bavarians slightly to an incline to get a volley in on my poor lonely battalion now, and he's moved his other Bavarian battalion to face on the heavy cavalry that's coming on. Typical. I really wanted a battalion of infantry to be my first reinforcements, but unfortunately I got the cavalry. And he's also moved his cavalry up. He had a battle move here because he was stationary. So he managed to move them 12. I'll double check, but I think he's still got another battle move, so he could move 12 on the next turn as well if he wanted to. Well, this is it at the movement stage. We shall go on to the musketry, and I'm not liking my odds here. 2 battalions against 1. We'll see how the British battalion can reply. Okay, so we've done the musketry for turn 5. And it was a bit of a bloodbath for me, as I expected. This battalion here has been decimated. It's lost an officer, and we got there another 7 guys. So that's well, it's below 50%, so they are going to have to fall back. So my only hope is I can rally the battalion over there, which I shall dice for in a minute. Did get some canister casualties on the Bavarian battalion that's moving on the flank there, or on this my British battalion's flank. Didn't really stop them from devastating them with volley fire though, and we did manage to get some casualties on the guards unit, which will also need to take a morale check, but they should be okay. Did they lose enough? Oh, sorry, yeah, they did lose. They lost 1 officer, so that might impact them. But then again, he's got a fresh battalion straight behind them. This Bavarian unit here is out of range of those cavalry at the moment, but I suspect that is going to change on the next move. So at the moment, unless I can rally this battalion here, I don't think I can stop him from at least getting to the guns. So we'll do a morale check on them, and we shall see what happens on turn 6. I do get reinforcements again on turn 8. Turn 7. Hopefully a battalion. A guards battalion would be very nice, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Okay, so we've completed movement for turn 6. I did manage to rally my 1 remaining battalion, so hopefully they will be able to delay the French advance a little bit. The French moved their full move on the right side, so these 2 battalions here, so they won't get to fire, but he only straightened his line on this battalion, so they will actually get a volley into my 1 remaining battalion. On the left, I made a move towards his cavalry, you can see there. Didn't quite make it. I was hoping he would counter charge as well, so he just got straight into melee, but unfortunately, rather cleverly, he's just held back because he's still got this Bavarian regiment, this Bavarian battalion here in line, which is going to put their first volley into my cavalry, and then I presume on the next turn he'll charge in with his cavalry. So that gives him the edge on what's coming in on this side of the battlefield. So we'll see how the musketry goes. I didn't get any more cannons deployed on this turn. Yet again, no sixes. I think my gunners have gone missing now. Well, the remaining gunners have gone missing. So that artillery piece there is in canister range, so I'm hoping I'll be able to get some hits on this turn. So we'll see what happens next. Okay, so turn 6 shooting, and the French inflicted 3 casualties, or I should say the Bavarian battalion here inflicted 3 casualties on my battalion here. I in turn inflicted 2 casualties onto the Bavarians, and quite brutal on this side. 6 potential casualties, or I call them casualties, but obviously we have to dice to see whether they are casualties. Because if you roll, for instance, for those 4 hits, I roll 4 dice. Any numbers that are the same, so if it's 2 5s, means it hits one person twice. So it could end up with less casualties. If it's a 6, it means it's an officer, and you then roll to see whether it's the colonel or whether it's one of the other officers, and then he still gets a saving throw. So that's why it's more difficult to hit officers, but it does impact the battalion more if they are killed. So we'll see what happens when I do the casualties. Okay, so the end result was 3 casualties for the Bavarian battalion. One of those was actually from canister. 2 casualties for myself with my remaining British battalion, but it was my cavalry obviously came off worse this turn. 5 casualties for them. They're not down to 50% yet, but that volley was quite bad. Even though it was only at medium range, it was the first volley, so they added the added bonus of that. And no officers. Again, the officers seem to be surviving quite well on this battle for change. Normally, a lot more officers are killed at this point, but they seem to be doing okay today. So I'll tidy up the table, and we shall move on to. There's no melee, obviously, so because no one's in contact, so we'll be turning on to turn 7, which means I get my next reinforcements. Okay, so movement turn 7, and looks like the French have basically got to the guns, or to the guns here. Not quite, just short on this turn, but they'll definitely get there on the next turn. Seem to be squaring it. These 2 battalions seem to be squaring up now. You can see the 2nd battalion there, the ones in the grey coats. They seem to be squaring up to finish off my last battalion that's with the guns. I did get my reinforcements this time. Didn't get the guards, but I did get the Scots Fusiliers. So they've come on this turn. You can see them there. In response to that, he has moved his other Bavarian regiment forward, or Bavarian battalion forward, to delay the Scots Fusiliers. And over here, the charge finally went in. I am outnumbered on this one, but well, we'll have to see how the dice rolls go. Might be okay. So not much firing on this turn. Probably actually only this battalion here can fire. This slightly damaged Bavarian battalion here. That one's out of range, and oh sorry, this one can as well, because he only moved 4, but the guards, they moved 6. So we'll do the firing and see what happens. Okay, so we've done the volley fire. I didn't manage to cause any casualties. The only casualty I caused was 1 from the artillery piece at canister range. He managed to cause 3 casualties on myself. So that battalion's still not at 50%. So if it passes its morale test, it'll be okay. It'll stay, but it does need to do a morale test. I thought he was going to use. He's going to fire with his volley on this one, but he's actually kept it. I presume he's saving that first volley that he might have to end up using on the Scots Fusiliers. But yep, we'll do the morale checks, and then we'll. Oh, sorry, no. Before the morale checks, we've got to do the melee over here. So we'll do the melee first, then we'll do the morale checks, and then we'll see. Okay, we've just completed turn 8 movement. On the previous turn, the unit that I thought might fail its morale test actually still held, so it's done quite well, that battalion, considering what it's been up against. It's bordering on 50%, so a couple more casualties and it will be below 50%. But anyway, on this turn, the Guards battalion, they're the French Guards battalion, have successfully taken control of three of the artillery pieces. We dashed to see whether the artillerymen would put up a fight, judging as the fact that only one of them had actually managed to get their gun around in the first place the whole game. So it was possible that the rest were still in their tents or somewhere else. So we dived to it, and they didn't put up a fight. They basically just decided to abandon the entrenchment to the French. So you can see there, it takes 6 figures to pull a gun. That's what we decided at the beginning of the game. So at the moment they've managed to take 3 of the artillery pieces, and they're just in the process of pulling them away now. The other French battalion has concentrated its position on my remaining, well, it's not my remaining battalion, but my remaining battalion from the beginning of the game, which, like I said, passed its morale test surprisingly, but it's nearly there at 50%. The melee didn't go as bad as I thought, but the cavalry melee, I did actually kill quite a number of the French, but it wasn't enough. I was still taken below 50%. So unfortunately, there goes my cavalry off into the unknown. And I've moved my I've moved my Fusiliers forward, but I can't see much stopping me from the French taking these guns. He still has 2 fresh battalions. You can see there the one that it's not quite 50%, so but he's not taking the chance, and he's pulled that away because obviously this is a campaign, so any units that break because of 50% do class as broken when it comes to the campaign, and we add up afterwards. So he's not taking that chance. So we shall see how the firing goes on this turn, or the musketry goes on this turn. I believe the Fusiliers and the Bavarians are now in range of each other, so they should be engaging each other, and obviously we've got this firefight here, but the French battalion has still not had their first fire, so they will do that now, so that volley is likely to be devastating. So we'll move on to that now. Okay, so we just done the musketry, and it was obviously it was always going to be bad for my battalion, and they with that French battalion there doing their first volley, it totally wiped out my my little battalion, or what was left of my battalion there, so they will be off the board now. These 2 exchanged volleys, and actually the Bavarians managed to kill the colonel of the Scots Fusiliers. That's the only colonel so far to died in this battle, so they'll have to take a morale check. Obviously they'll take the Fusiliers will take a morale check. This battalion here will have to leave the battlefield because they're well below 50, like 25% now. And I've got some reinforcements coming in on the next turn, but obviously I think it's going to be a struggle for me to even save the 2 guns that are there. But we'll see what happens. I'll do a quick table clear up, and then we'll do the morale checks and see what happens on the next turn. Okay, so we completed turn 9 movement, and you can see just over here started to gather those guns there, and obviously the previous ones are being towed away at the moment by the Guards battalion. I did get some reinforcements, but not the reinforcements I wanted. I really wanted maybe a full regiment or full battalion of line, or a cavalry regiment would have been ideal if I had to have any chance. I actually got a half battalion, which is a militia battalion, So it's not looking great. I'm very doubtful I can do anything on this turn to stop them guns from being taken away. So we'll complete this turn and see what happens on this turn. Okay, so we completed turn 9 musketry, and just a little fight going on between the Scots Fusiliers, the Bavarian battalion there, and the half of the French battalion. The other half obviously still pulling the artillery away. We decided we'll end it there. Had I got a regiment of cavalry, then possibly I could have tried to get some of the guns back, but getting a half battalion of militia with no help at all. I'm still outnumbered, and the French Bavarians are pulling the guns away as we speak. So we'll put it down as a French Bavarian victory. They successfully captured the guns. That will obviously affect my siege, and we'll see how that affects the campaign. So far in the campaign, the French Bavarians are doing very well. 2 successes so far on the battlefield, and it's not looking good for the British Allied at the moment. So, stats wise, I'll put up a little for those that are interested in the old school wargame stats of what the casualties were. I'll just put up a little picture of what casualties were received, and that's it. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks.